beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we are talking about the Golden Hour palette. I know I am way behind on my ColourPop releases. I had a little community post about it a couple weeks ago when the Twilight collection was coming out, but I'm working through everything. I'm trying my best to catch up. I do have the Valentine's Day collection. I think I'm going to do that one next because I think that the Twilight collection video will be more useful and make more sense to do closer to a restock. And we don't have a confirmed restock date yet, but we do have confirmation that they are going to restock it. So I'm going to work on both of those, Twilight and Valentine's Day, over the next weekish, but I really want to get out some comparisons for this Golden Hour palette. This is currently available. You can get it from both ColourPop and Ulta. It's priced at $24 US, but if you buy it from the ColourPop site, you can save 10% using my affiliate code. It's just my first name, Amanda, and that will knock off a little bit from almost everything on the site. Some of the collaborations and all of the sets, vaults, and bundles are excluded from coupon codes, but in general, you should be able to save using that coupon code Amanda. Thank you to everybody who does choose to use the code. It really does help me out a lot, and it helps keep the channel running, keeps these comparisons coming at you, so I really appreciate that. And I'm going to do my best to catch up and get back on track. They've been sending out the PR really late to me too, so that also makes it difficult. Like the Valentine's collection, I got the day that it launched, so there was no possible way for me to get a video out before because I didn't even have it. So I'm sure there's some weather delays and things like that, but we're just doing our best here. We're doing the best we can to stay on track. So let's talk about this Golden Hour palette. This is a 16 pan palette, but it has the larger sized eyeshadow pans. I should have pulled one of the old 16 pan palettes out to show you a size comparison. I didn't think about it until this very moment when I'm telling you about the pan size. But if you put this next to the Fame and Fortune palette or the Truly Madly Deeply or one of those, this one's bigger. The actual footprint of the palette itself is bigger and the shadows are bigger. Hopefully you know what I mean since I did not have the foresight to put them side by side here, but these are the 26mm eyeshadow pans. There's no mirror in here. This is just their regular cardboard packaging, but it has a little bit of a sheen to it, as you can see. And it does have a magnetic closure, plus these eyeshadow pans are magnetic, so you can pop them out and switch them around if you feel so inclined. We have a mix of finishes in here. There's one pearlescent glitter. It's just that shade Golden Waves. And that is their new updated pressed glitter formula. So it's not the big chunks of pressed glitter like they used to do. This is a finer, smaller glitter piece, I guess. There are 2 mattes with glitter. There are 7 true mattes, and then there are 6 just regular metallic shimmers. I think you're going to notice what I notice here. This Golden Hour palette doesn't have a lot of actual gold. It's a lot more Golden Hour than golden, if you know what I mean. Now, I'm going to show you just some swatches of this palette first. I split it into the top 2 rows and then the bottom 2 rows. That way you can really see all the shadows individually. You can get an appreciation for what they look like applied to the skin. More so, I think, than when you see them all jammed in together on my arm. I do have a little tiny chicken arm, so sometimes I can't really fully show you the textures and individual colors of a larger palette like this unless I break it up. And I think that this gives you just a better idea of which shade name label goes with which, what the actual brush swatch looks like in comparison to the finger swatch. I will say performance-wise, the bottom 2 rows are a lot better for me than the top 2 rows. I don't see an overall amazing formula, but I do think that the bottom 2 rows are better than the top 2 rows. In general, I think these feel just drier and not quite as opaque as a lot of the palettes that I compared it to. But maybe that's just me, and that's also not necessarily a bad thing. I do prefer a little bit more of a thick or opaque formula across the board, both mattes and shimmers. That's just my personal preference. But a lot of people like a softer look, a softer, more buildable application. And there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make it bad. It's just not fitting my preference. When you look at the bare necessities, especially those lighter mattes, I think you can really tell what I'm talking about. Those are just a lot thicker and a lot more opaque. I will say though, this golden hour palette has a good wear time on me, and that's probably a product of that slightly drier texture formula. So, there are ups and downs for that, but I especially notice it when I'm doing these comparison swatches. The texture just feels different. It's more noticeable on the mattes, but I notice it on the metallics as well. This Your Golden Mega Palette, by the way, was the first thing I thought of when the Golden Hour palette came out, probably because of the names. But you can see here the shades are pretty darn similar. And I think that was probably predictable. When you see a neutral palette like this Golden Hour palette is, you're gonna have plenty of very similar shades to compare with. Just a reminder though, these comparison swatches aren't necessarily just to make a point that, oh, we didn't need this golden hour palette. That's not really what I'm getting at here. It's more of a combined purpose of maybe you already have these shades in your collection. If you have any of these, I think I used like 16 different palettes for these comparisons. If you have these, then maybe, you're drawn to these colors and you don't necessarily need to purchase this new golden hour palette. But on the flip side, these comparisons can also show you, hey, if you missed out on a palette that's no longer available, or it was your favorite and you used it up and you need a replacement, or maybe you just want something that's more compact than one of the mega palettes. It's not just to say, hey, look, you already have these shades already exist. That's not the entire point. That can be the point, and I think a lot of the time for a lot of you that is the point, but it can go the other way too. So I never want it to be perceived that I'm doing these comparisons to say that a new palette doesn't need to be made. I pretty much never think that. I've been doing this for so long that my prevailing attitude is just, there is a product for everybody and there is a person for every product. So even though I'm personally not incredibly excited or invested in this golden hour palette, I do think that it's going to be great for a lot of people. And a lot of the palettes in this comparison round are some of my favorites. I mean, my Bare Necessities palette is one that I continually use and recommend. I was a big fan of the California Love palette. So I hope that that point comes across. It's really just take whatever you're going to get from it, and that's going to be different for everybody. I will say, though, one of my favorite things about this golden hour palette are the sort of mustardy yellow brown shades in the second half of the palette. The shades are called Never Leaving and Views. I think those are two of the more unique shades. When you look through all of these many comparison swatches, I'm not really landing on those two, particularly that Never Leaving shade is not super prevalent in all of these other wide-reaching array of comparison palettes. So I really like those. I think those shades are what make this golden hour palette special and appealing and different from a lot of the other neutral palettes that ColourPop has offered up over the years. Personally, I'm also just really a fan of these mustardy brown type of shades. I'm always drawn to them. So I think that's softening me up a little bit here. So that's really just down to a personal preference. And personally, I like that type of color. So I'm happy to see that. I like when there's a little twist on the usual. But in general, I don't think this is really bringing a lot to the table color story wise, but that's from somebody who has a lot of neutral palettes, and I know not everybody is in that same boat, and not everybody wants or needs all of their palettes to be super exciting and colorful and whatnot. Like, this is gonna be great for a lot of people. So I don't necessarily think it's bad just because it's not the thing I'm yearning for right now. Aside from that matte mustardy yellow, this Golden Hour palette does feel like a bit of a throwback to the warm, neutral, beloved cult favorite color stories of the past, like ABH Soft Glam, this Tartlet Toasted palette. I tried to find my Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. I can't find it. I must have stuck it somewhere in storage and I just could not get my hands on it. But I think you get the point from these comparisons that are present in the video. This is just a classic warm neutral. I wish it had a couple more deeper colors. I think that would help add some excitement for me anyway, because it is a lot more lighter and mid-tones and just a little sprinkling of like two darker mattes at the end. So I think they could have really stood to lose a couple of these shimmers, particularly the 2 or 3 lightest shimmers and the 2 or 3 middle shimmers, all look very, very similar, especially on the eye. So we could have maybe scrapped those and added some deeper shades, and I think that would have made this palette a lot more well-rounded and interesting. But, you know, that's just one gal's opinion as usual. That is all the comparisons I have for you today. I could have probably done 50 more palette comparisons, but overall, I feel like you get the gist here. It's very similar to a lot of our already existing warm neutral palettes, but you know, we loved those for a reason, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just want to thank you again for your patience and understanding as I was dealing with some family stuff, some emergent family stuff. So that's why I'm behind. And 99% of the response to that was really just a lot of kindness and good vibes. And I appreciate that. I don't know if you know, but this internet can be kind of a terrible place sometimes. And you always make it so much nicer. So I really appreciate you. I hope that this video was helpful. I would love to hear what you think about this Golden Hour palette. Have you already picked it up? I know it came out like, what, almost a month ago at this point. I would love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you real soon in my next video. And I love your face so much. Okay, bye.